Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It might sound a little different, and that's because Austin is here with me in person today. He decided to pay me a visit up here in Brockport, New York for our spring break. A very exciting time. There's a lot to do in Brockport with all the snow laying around, and there's, well, I'm being facetious if you can't tell, but we did go to see the Vegas Golden Knights defeat the Buffalo Sabres last week, so that was some interesting times. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been great up here.
Yeah, there's been a lot going on as far as NFL news goes. We'll catch you up with that in a moment. We'll definitely get to some Steelers news as well. It's Season 3, Episode 3 as well. We're going to break this up into two parts, and because it is March 13th right now, there's been a lot going on as far as signings and trades that will all become official as of tomorrow, or technically, I guess, at midnight tonight. So let's get started, why don't we? Starting with the NFL news. So actually, just breaking on Twitter that we were just talking about right before we started was, according to Adam Schefter, the Packers and tight end Jimmy Graham have agreed to a 3-year deal that will become finalized tomorrow. The details of the deal have not yet been revealed. Is this a good move?
I love this move. Personally, I like it for the Packers more than Jimmy Graham because I really wanted to see the comeback. I wanted to see him go back to the Saints. The Saints needed a tight end. It seemed like a perfect reunion for Drew Brees and Jimmy Graham. But regardless, it's a good move for the Packers and Graham. I think he went to a competitor. I think having Aaron Rodgers throw the ball is just as good as Drew Brees throwing it. He definitely chose a good quarterback to work with. And this will be another Super Bowl contending team again this year, as long as Aaron Rodgers doesn't get hurt. The Packers were one of the favorites to go to the Super Bowl early on before he got hurt, so this team is a good one he's joining. What do you think?
I'm in complete agreement with you. I think as far as the perspective from Jimmy Graham, he kind of took a step back the last few years after really tearing up the league early on in his career with Drew Brees. He had a couple decent years in Seattle. Last year, despite catching 10 touchdowns, he really struggled as far as his yards per catch and overall yards went. He only had 9.1 yards per reception. This gives him a chance to, kind of a change of scenery. And hold up, we have some breaking news that we're going to get to in a moment. Actually, let me just finish my thought here. But in any case, Jimmy Graham is looking to win a championship, and in my opinion, at 31 years of age, and having a couple down years by his standards, he's going to want to make a big impact. And, again, I did say that his yards per catch and yards were down. He did still catch 10 touchdowns, so it's clear that he can play. So, Austin, you want to fill us in on what that breaking news was?
Yeah, the Packers, in a stunning move, have cut Jordy Nelson. This is literally just popped up a second ago. I don't even know what to think of that. I know his production went down when Aaron Rodgers wasn't playing, and I don't know, but still, he's still a top wide receiver when he's with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers puts that trust into him and stuff. This is a crazy move, and I kind of have a fear now that it's just the immediate fear that he's going to go to the Patriots. And he's going to be great again. Do you have anything to say?
Well, I just pulled up his profile here. At 32 years old last season, he played in 15 games. He only missed one. He caught 53 passes, which was his lowest since 2012 when he only played in 12 games starting in 10 of those. So at that point, I don't believe he was even the top wide receiver on the team. I think it might have still been Greg Jennings at that point. But in any case, his receptions were down. He only had 482 yards, which was 9.1 yards per catch, and caught 6 touchdowns. And I can assure you that most of that production came when Rodgers was in a quarterback and not Brett Hundley. It was clear that Davante Adams was the leading guy when Hundley was the quarterback. Do we have any idea how much his contract was worth last year?
Jordy Nelson? I don't know off the top of my head.
This is why current cap hit of $8,250,000. So that explains a lot of it. Nelson, of course, has been relatively healthy throughout his career, but he did miss all of 2015 after suffering an injury against the Steelers in a preseason game. this will be quite interesting to see where he ends up. We'll be monitoring Twitter over the next hour, however long this podcast is, to see if we can come up with some more details for you. But in any case, we'll keep you posted, of course. So back to what we were talking about. We covered Jimmy Graham. I guess the big news of the day, though, the thing that everyone's been wondering for months now, is what's going to happen with Kirk Cousins. And boy, he was a real winner today. Not only did he go to a contending team, he signed with the Minnesota Vikings, but he signed a 3-year, $86 million contract. But not only that, Austin, as we know, all of the money is fully guaranteed. This is the first time in NFL history a quarterback has been signed to a multi-year deal where the money in the contract is fully guaranteed. The Vikings were a game away from the Super Bowl last season. Where are they now with Cousins signing, and do you like the signing for the Vikings?
I hate it. I hate everything about it. They could have kept Keenum for $20 million a year without the crazy guarantees, so the Vikings could have cut him if he was trash, talking about Keenum, and used the extra money to improve elsewhere, like on the O-line. To fully guarantee $86 million over 3 years is completely stupid. I think it is stupid to completely guarantee a contract for 1 year because you can't account for injuries. It's just you don't know what is going to happen. And now you're stuck with this guy for 3 years just because you're trying to make a push. And that's the thing about it. It's barely an upgrade. I have always thought Kirk Cousins was very overrated. And he was just liked because he threw a lot. Yeah, he put up a bunch of yards in the season, but he never had this amazing amount of touchdowns. He never had this very small amount of interceptions. I mean, his best ratio was 29-11, which is it's a good ratio, but that was in 2016. That was a while ago now. I just hate that. I think he's maybe the 12th best quarterback in the league, and for that, I think his contract sucks. I think that the Vikings just went full idiotic in this market right now, and really messed everything up. I just think that it was an awful idea, and it's baffling to me. Me and John, we discussed this about what the Vikings were going to do. They had so much promise. They could have went with Teddy Bridgewater and given him another chance. When he was playing, he was decent. They could have kept with Case Keenum and given him a few more years. They could have paid him that $20 million that the Broncos are giving him. And they could have cut him without having the guarantees. If he was back to trash, they could have cut him. So, and it's not even like Keenum was bad last year. In my mind, Keenum was the 13th best quarterback in the league last year, and just that year considered. Obviously, Keenum history is not as good, but I feel like there's a pattern here. You saw Jared Goff as soon as Jeff Fisher left is good. You see Case Keenum after he leaves Jeff Fisher's system is decent in his first year. I think that you should take the chance to say maybe Case Keenum was in a bad system and he might actually be decent, especially when in college Case Keenum set all those records for throwing. He's like a magician in college. It's just I was so mad at the Vikings for this decision. I texted my Vikings fan friend like, what is wrong with everything that your organization is doing? But back to the point, in my mind this was terrible, awful move. All it takes is Cousins to get injured, and the Vikings are screwed with no cap room. I can't say enough how awful I think this is. I wish they just kept Keenum and improved elsewhere. They wasted so much money on Kirk. What do you have to say?
Well, I'm as you know, I'm in agreement with you as far as the idea of signing Cousins to that much money. Someone who let's think about this. In my opinion, he is the third best quarterback in his division now, right? Assuming Rodgers is healthy and you have Matthew Stafford healthy, I think he's the third best quarterback. A couple years ago, or any time really, even yesterday, if I had told you that Cousins would get $86 million over 3 years, all guaranteed, I think you would think that I'd be crazy, and I think that would make sense. The fact that he got that much is amazing to me, adding on to the fact that it's all guaranteed. And yes, this is a huge victory for NFL players, I should mention. It's been a long battle. They're the only they're the only sport of the four major sports in North America that don't have guaranteed contracts, to my knowledge, at least in full. So when you see something like for instance, Drew Brees just got a 2-year, $50 million deal. We'll touch on that in a little bit. $27 million of that is guaranteed. So that's what really matters. Where he can make up to $50 million, it's likely that he won't for reasons of incentives or retiring. But regardless, it's huge for NFL players that they have their first multi-year guaranteed contract. So I just want to say that Kirk Cousins is a huge winner for that. It's also worth pointing out, kind of playing devil's advocate, I guess, that they're going to be having a lot more weapons on the Vikings offense, and Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Dalvin Cook, as opposed to Ryan Grant on the Redskins, which I'm not saying I agree with the move, but I will say that that's what people who defend the move are going to say. But back to the point at hand, I think the Vikings are taking a huge risk. I know the numbers are good, and he didn't have a ton of help the last few years, but I don't get the logic in giving this guy this much money. I will say that a 3-year deal was smarter as opposed to, say, a 4 or 5-year deal because he is 29. Signing a deal any longer would put a stranglehold on the Vikings organization for even longer than 3 years. And this is a team that's ready to win now. So I don't see him being an all-pro kind of guy that's going to be the difference in the Vikings winning a Super Bowl from where they were last season. Yes, I think he's a little better than Case Keenum, but I don't think he's that much better. This could be a big flop for the Vikings if they don't win a championship in the next 3 years. Some more breaking news from the NFL. Josh McCown, excuse me. The Jets have agreed to bring back Josh McCown as their quarterback. I can't say that was really all that surprising. I know we talked about that being a possibility before.
Yeah, I didn't really expect Josh McCown to really have that large of a market. He's older. He's actually very much older. And, I mean, it just seems like most of the teams that were available now, since a lot of the other teams filled up their quarterback positions rather early, his market was dwindling very fast. So he's back with the Jets. It's not really a surprise.
Yeah, $10 million for 1 year is McCown's contract. That seems like a little much to me, but again, we don't know all the details. Anyways, Keenum being replaced by Cousins, so that left Case Keenum in a different scenario. He decided to sign with the Denver Broncos. The 30-year-old will be expected to be the new starting quarterback for the Broncos, who could go a number of different ways for the quarterback position in the future. They have the number 5 overall pick, so a quarterback is certainly possible. Or they could continue hoping that first-round pick Paxton Lynch continues to develop. Do you like the move?
I think it's a great move. The Broncos don't bust a bank, and if Keenum can play like he did last year, he will be great. He has Demaryius Thomas. He has Emmanuel Sanders still. He has weapons, just like in with the Vikings. At the least, not all his money is guaranteed, so he can be cut if necessary. I think at the worst, he's a decent bridge quarterback for a rookie if needed, and I think he could work out swimmingly. I personally think Paxton Lynch needs to go. I think it's time to try and trade him or something. I thought in the past that was one of the Broncos' biggest follies, just trading up to get Paxton Lynch and not starting him, and just he sat there and just wallowed and became not as valuable to other teams. They should just trade him as soon as he wasn't starting as a first-round pick. I don't know. I think they're working it out now. I think that Case Keenum is the answer, and if not, he's the bridge. What do you think?
Yeah, well, this is actually, I think, the best possible move for both sides. As far as the Broncos go, it wouldn't have been smart to break the bank on Kirk Cousins, as we know. We just saw the Vikings do that. They appear to be a rebuilding team at this point after the trade of Aqib Talib. Now they can have a decent bridge quarterback for the next few years who has some good upside. And Keenum gets to play under Gary Kubiak again. And yes, I know Kubiak is no longer the head coach in Denver. He did accept a front office position. And Keenum's first NFL success came back in his rookie season in 2013 in Houston. So that's a win there. And as far as Keenum goes, the expectation shouldn't be that high. I mean, they weren't good last year. And as I said, they're in a rebuilding mode, so he shouldn't be expected to be a Pro Bowl type of player. I think this is going to work out for the Broncos. As far as what they should do at quarterback, I definitely don't think Paxton Lynch is the answer. He's had limited playing time the last 2 years, but he hasn't looked good in either of the 2 seasons that he's played. So it could be time to move on from him. And it's interesting to note that he has all the physical tools, as we know, at 6'7" and 244 pounds, only 24 years old, but he just has not been able to put it together at the NFL level. So, all right. Also, no details on the Keenum contract as of this point in time. The contract we did talk about momentarily was Drew Brees, who signed a 2-year, $50 million deal, $27 million guaranteed. The contract is likely the last of the 39-year-old's career. Brees, who has a Hall of Fame resume, returns to the team that came a miracle play away from reaching the NFC Championship game. He was never going to sign with anybody else, let's be honest.
Yeah, I never had any doubt that he was going somewhere else. I couldn't imagine. I would have thought he would have retired if the Saints didn't offer him a deal that he was happy with.
Absolutely. Another quarterback from the NFC, Sam Bradford, has been signed by the Arizona Cardinals. He will be replacing former quarterback Carson Palmer, who just announced his retirement a few months ago. Bradford is 30 years old and is getting $20 million, so he'll be stepping in as a starting quarterback. Do you like this move?
I think the Cardinals had to do something. I would have preferred Teddy Bridgewater out of the Vikings quarterbacks, but they needed a single quarterback on the roster that could be a starter. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, as far as quarterback situations go, I think they're right around with Buffalo's one of the worst in the league after their starter retired. I mean, what do they have? Drew Stanton, and that's it. Ryan Lindley, right?
Yeah, maybe him too. Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're just guys. Let's be honest. And yes, Bradford has a tendency to get hurt a lot, but I don't think the Cardinals are finding someone that can step in and be a day one starter. They may still take a quarterback as well. We'll have to see, but I think it's a smart move. $20 million may be a little expensive, but they have a good defense, so it might be worth spending a little bit extra on him this year. Wide receiver Danny Amendola, previously of the New England Patriots, has just signed a contract with the Miami Dolphins. He's expected to replace Jarvis Landry, who we'll get to in a moment, in the slot, and he's going to be going along with former Chiefs wide receiver Albert Wilson, who was also signed by the Dolphins. Do you think he's going to have success in Miami, or is he going to be one of those former Patriots receivers that just, was great because of Tom Brady?
See, Danny Amendola, I never really liked until the playoffs. They call him Playoff Danny in New England, and I really feel like during the regular season, he's not there. He's not a name you hear. And so for the Dolphins, I think this is an awful move because where Danny thrives is in the playoffs, and the Dolphins haven't really been. I mean, they're not really. They're a borderline playoff team. They didn't make it
at best.
Yeah, at best, and they're on a downturn. They cut their whole team. They're really blowing it up. They're about to be one of the worst in the league, and it might be for a while. So I actually don't like this move for Danny Amendola. I mean, I think they needed it because at this point they need receivers. They only had Devontae Parker and.
Do they still have Kenny Stills?
And Kenny Stills.
They're still disappointing.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
They're still disappointing, and really they just added another disappointing regular season guy. I feel like Amendola is not one you really hear about. Albert Wilson too. I've hated the Chiefs wide receivers for a while until they drafted Tyreek Hill because I didn't think that any of them were like NFL ready starters. I felt like all of them were just guys that the Chiefs could scrounge up together. So I think the Dolphins are not doing so hot so far in free agency. What do you think?
Well, this is a great move for Amendola because he spent now 5 years with the New England Patriots. We know he's taken a good amount of pay cuts there in the time he's been there, operating with the chance to win championships, which he won too. So that's great for him, and he has been a proven postseason performer. But the problem, as you already mentioned, Austin, you have to get there first, and the Dolphins are trending in the wrong direction. As far as that goes. We'll get to some of the moves that they've made in a little bit too, but I don't know. Amendola is probably a player that was aided by Tom Brady, and not having him is probably going to hurt, but it makes sense for him. I don't know how much the contract is worth, but he's going to make a good amount of money, and Wilson isn't a guy that really wowed me either, but it's just another example of why the Patriots have such an easy time winning the division at times because the other teams in the division just don't make good moves, but I digress. Jaguars linebacker Paul Posluszny announced his retirement from the NFL on Tuesday. A former second-round pick for the Buffalo Bills, the 33-year-old Penn State product split 12 years between the aforementioned Bills and Jacksonville Jaguars, amassing a total of 1,214 tackles, and 984 of them came with the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is actually second in team history. He was a potential free agent target for the Steelers, according to some people, although I don't think it would have made much sense. Do you think it would have made sense to bring in Puzzlesny at all?
Nah, he's old and slow. The Steelers need young and fast. Obviously, we brought in Sean Spence, and that was a gigantic mistake as he wasn't ready to fill Ryan Shazier's fast, young role. So, no, I don't think so. Do you think so?
Puzzlesny, I think, might be even slower than Spence, so it definitely would not have helped. It would have been adding more of the same problem that the Steelers have. The Washington Redskins are expected to sign free agent wide receiver Paul Richardson to a 5-year, $40 million contract, $20 million being guaranteed. The 25-year-old had a breakout year in 2017 as a deep threat with 44 catches for 703 yards and 6 TDs. You like the move?
I actually do like this move. I mean, I think he's getting slightly overpaid because we haven't really seen enough out of him. But I like what I've seen in the short amount of time and the short amount of things he's done. He's made some really nice catches. I remember one against the Lions where it was a one-handed grab specifically. It was in the playoffs. And it was just so nice. And then I honestly guessed his contract, though. I said he's probably going to get a contract like Tavon Austin had. He's probably going to get $8 million. I nailed it right on because he gets $8 million a year. So, personally, for the Redskins, I like the move. What do you think?
I'm in complete agreement with you, actually. I think he might have gotten a little overpaid here, but he adds the perfect dynamic to the Washington Redskins that they are missing. They haven't had a deep threat since Deshaun Jackson left, and this gives Alex Smith a good downfield weapon. So I think it's a good idea. Maybe he's getting overpaid a little much, but I have a feeling the contract will be structured in a way that they'll be able to cut bait if he's not very good in a couple years. The Baltimore Ravens have released running back Danny Woodhead. The 10-year pro is 33 years old now, but he might still be able to fit in a role as a third down back for some teams. He actually has more receiving yards in his career than he does rushing yards, fun fact. Should the Steelers consider signing him, even if it's at the veteran minimum?
Not this year. This may have been a good move next year when the Steelers may not have Bell, but right now there isn't space on the roster for him, especially with his injury history. I'm good with rolling with James Conner and Fitz, probably Fitz. I mean, I guess there's one extra slot, but I mean, I wouldn't want it to be Woodhead, personally. What do you think?
It may seem like a good idea on the surface, but I don't think it makes a ton of sense. He's only 5'8", and he's been injured a lot over the past 2 years. He's only played 10 games the last 2 years. He's lasted longer than most backs than most backs generally do in the league. But I also think you could find someone similar to him in the draft that doesn't have that injury risk. If he comes in at the minimum, I'd consider it for training camp, but with Bell already entrenched as the starter this year, who's going to be playing on third down, I don't think it makes a ton of sense. Another big trade happened in the NFL last week. The Seattle Seahawks are blowing it up. So first and foremost, they traded defensive end Michael Bennett and a 7th-round pick to the Philadelphia Eagles for a 5th-round pick, and former undrafted free agent wide receiver Marcus Johnson. Furthermore, the Seahawks released 7-year veteran and 4-time All-Pro cornerback Richard Sherman. They're also reportedly shopping safety Earl Thomas on the trade block, and the Eagles also added Haloti Ngata to their defensive line. So let's talk about all this. You want to talk about the Seahawks first? You want to talk about the Eagles first? What do you want to go first?
I was just going to be going through it all just randomly. I think I was going back and forth, but I could like the Seahawks a little bit better now and hate the Eagles a little bit more since Michael Bennett is my least favorite player in the league. But he does give the Eagles more depth on their defensive line, which is already scary, especially now with Haloti Ngata. It also helps the Seahawks, too, who have been struggling to figure out how to pay all their stars, and dumping off Bennett's large contract saved them some money. So it was a good trade for both of them. The Seahawks are in an odd state because they've been forced to blow up their team due to money restrictions. The Legion of Boom is basically no more, and they're just blowing it up to hopefully get some help in the draft, which is why it's good they got at least a 5th-round pick from the Eagles. Seattle actually got a 3rd-round offer from the Patriots for him and denied it because they didn't want to go back on the Eagles, and I respect that on so many levels. I want just because we hate the Patriots. I was just happy to see that they didn't go back on their word just because they got offered more, and obviously that would have been moving up like an entire round, But anyway, as for the Richard Sherman release, it had to happen. He wanted so much money, and the Seahawks just couldn't pay it with him getting older, and they don't have the cap room, and they need to pay other people, and they need to get help elsewhere. The Legion of Boom is just no more. So, on all the news that happened between the Seahawks and the Eagles, what do you have to say?
Another bit of NFL news that we're getting to, some breaking news. Former Colts wide receiver Dante Moncrief has just agreed to sign with the Jacksonville Jaguars, so he will be staying in the AFC South. We'll give you some updates on that when they come to us. So back to the point at hand. Starting with the trade, I'll just say that I'm glad the Eagles played in the NFC because Chris Long, Fletcher Cox, Derek Barnett, Brandon Graham, Michael Bennett, and Haloti Ngata, that's not fun to play against. It looks like Vinny Curry's on the trading block for the Philadelphia Eagles, and that makes sense. Even though he is a decent pass rusher, Michael Bennett is an upgrade over him. Trading Curry will free up cap room, and the Eagles just became a little more dangerous on the defensive line. And yes, it's not a huge upgrade, but I'd hate to play this team once a year, let alone twice. This is a good move for the Eagles, too, because wide receiver Marcus Johnson was an undrafted free agent, so he doesn't really add too much here. Ngata isn't the same player that he once was with the Baltimore Ravens, but he can still be a solid player in a rotation. And I'm expecting another average to mediocre season for him before he retires, but he's still going to add to this defense. And you already touched on it, Austin. The Seahawks are definitely blowing it up. They fought Father Time hard the last couple of years. We all knew they were on the decline, and I predicted a year early that they were done. But I don't know how much. Or sorry, let me back up. I did call it a year early. I don't know how much more Michael Bennett can offer teams, but Thomas and Sherman can still be good players in the league for a little bit longer because they are younger. We are seeing the Seahawks go through what the Steelers defense went through in the early 20-teens, if you will, right around 2011 to 2013. The defense has gotten old and overpaid. Russell Wilson is running for his life half the time. He has no offensive line to protect him. And the Seahawks have recognized that they need to protect their star quarterback. And without the defense to support him anymore, it doesn't make sense to sink money into those aging players on defense while your quarterback is running for his life. It was a good run for the Seahawks defense, but it's over, and I think it's going to be a while before they return to prominence, don't you think?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be anytime soon where they're a great defense anymore. They're transitioning to be a great offense.
Yes, indeed. The San Francisco 49ers jumped on one of the members of the Legion of Boom, signing Richard Sherman less than a day after he was released by the Seattle Seahawks, and it was funny. I mentioned to Austin, it's going to be hilarious. He's going to go to San Francisco now, and sure enough, a day later, that's what he does. A 3-year deal worth up to $39 million, most of that being in incentives. With the 49ers making this signing, are they now contenders for the NFC Championship next year? How much is Sherman going to contribute to the 49ers? Is he still a great player in your mind?
Well, the 49ers could be a 14-win team next season, or they could be a 7-win team next year. It all depends on Garoppolo. I feel like I haven't seen enough games from him to say that he's a great quarterback, but he has shown that he definitely might be. As of right now, I think they are a wild card team. I think they're about 9-7, maybe just pushing over 8-8, and Sherman helps that, as the 49ers corners weren't that great. I think it was a good sign for them. I think Sherman did push them just slightly over that 8-8 mark to that 9-7, in my personal opinion. But again, if Garoppolo is great, if he really shows that he can be that quarterback that developed behind Tom Brady and is just amazing, this team could be unstoppable because they have so much money and they have so many young players that are great positions. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the 49ers are between an 8 to 10 win team next year. I fear that Jimmy Garoppolo may not be as good as advertised due to the fact that he's only played a few career games, so he doesn't have a big sample size. While the 49ers are trending upwards, as you mentioned, they are a better team than they were last year. I still don't see the 49ers being that much better. As far as the Sherman signing goes, I think he's still a quality starter in this league, but he's definitely not at the level he was once at. He can help the cornerback position there, but he's not going to be the difference between them making and winning the Super Bowl. Just like I felt Joe Hayden was also not going to be the difference between the Steelers making and winning the Super Bowl. Another bit of NFL news, the Giants have cut cornerback Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie. The 10-year pro has 30 career interceptions and 2 Pro Bowls to his name. Do you have any guess as to where he's going to end up?
I honestly think he might just be done in the league. They asked him to be a safety and then take a pay cut, and he didn't want to take a pay cut, so he might just be done. I feel like he hasn't really been that great in a tiny bit now, so I think he might just have to end up retiring.
I believe he didn't even have an interception last year, which is obviously not good when you're at that position. Yeah, this very well could be it for Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, his cousin, Antonio Cromartie. I believe they're cousins, right?
I think, maybe. I'm not really sure.
That family is large. I know the Steelers also had a cousin of Antonio Cromartie, Damon Cromartie-Smith, for a few years as well. But he also retired as well. The Los Angeles Rams have been in the news a lot lately, Austin. They just acquired cornerback Aqib Talib from the Denver Broncos for a 5th-round pick. They also added cornerback Sam Shields and Marcus Peters in a trade a couple weeks ago as well. So I know we didn't talk about all these moves specifically, but kind of what do you think about the Talib trade and kind of how the cornerbacks are looking right now?
Yeah, the Rams just wanted to stack up on cornerbacks this offseason, apparently. They just wanted all the corners they could get. Rams have all the corners... I'm sorry. They have all the good corners now. And I personally like all of them. Even the Sam Shields deal is very team-friendly in terms of cost. I don't have the number in my head right now. I believe it was only $2 million a year. And what I thought of that, Sam Shields is very injury-prone. He's struggled with concussions, but when Sam Shields was playing, he was really good. So for $2 million a year, even with that injury risk, I feel like that's very team-friendly, and I really like that move. I think the Rams' defense is going to be great next year, despite losing Ogletree and Quinn. I think they will fix those holes in the draft. I feel like a defensive end is replaceable. Ogletree is going to be a little bit harder, in my opinion, but I think that Quinn hasn't been that great in a minute. So I personally think the Rams are going to figure this out, and their defense is going to be great next year, and it's because of what they started to do with all these corners in preparation of getting rid of Trumaine Johnson. What do you think?
I think it all makes a ton of sense. Their cornerback position was the worst part of their strong defense last year, and the moves they've made the last few weeks have given them a good chance. So I think that's definitely good for the Los Angeles Rams. As far as the Broncos go, they're clearly rebuilding. They want to shed the big contract of Aqib Talib while acquiring another draft pick. I think it's a good move for both teams. Looks like we have a breaking news update. Austin, what's going on?
The Arizona Cardinals have officially released running back Adrian Peterson. Obviously, he had a long career with the Vikings. He made $14 million at one point with them. Got cut, and then... No, I'm not sorry. He got traded. Got traded to the Saints, not cut. And then the Saints traded him to the Cardinals. And now his tenure's up with the Cardinals. Do you think he's done in the league?
Let's see. I just pulled up his statistics. He only played in 3 games in his last year with the Vikings. He's going to be 33 years old. I remember he didn't play at all in New Orleans. He had one great game with the Cardinals, I believe. It was one game that was really nice, but for the most part he wasn't that good. He hasn't averaged 4 yards a carry in a season since 2015. I think a team might bring him in for training camp, but to be completely honest with you, I'd be shocked if he gets another chance to start, which sucks because he's at 99 career rushing touchdowns, and that bothers me.
Yeah, hopefully he gets that one more. I think he is personally going to do the same exact thing. I think a team is going to bring him in for camp and stuff, and he's going to be cut by the end when the rosters have to be down to 53. And a team may pick him up for depth later in the season, which I think that would make sense, but I can't really see him making it in the beginning when everyone's healthy and stuff.
And here's the other thing that's interesting to note. When him and Chris Johnson were the best running backs in the league, 2009, 2010, the big question mark was about speed, or I guess game-breaking ability. Everyone thought Peterson was a better overall back, but Chris Johnson was faster, and we saw that Peterson might have slowed down a lot over the last couple of years. So it is quite possible that Peterson, having lost that speed, is no longer the same player. And could we be seeing the same thing with Le'Veon Bell too?
Maybe he could be on the downward spiral. We need time to tell.
All right, get this. There's more news from the NFL. Carolina Panthers are expected to sign free agent cornerback Rashad Breeland, formerly from the Washington Redskins, worth $24 million in total and $11 million in guarantees. Breeland started at cornerback for the Redskins in each of his first 4 years, tallying 8 interceptions, 60 passes defensed and 1 sack in that span. He was more targeted with Josh Norman on the other side, so he's had good and bad results in his time, especially struggling with higher-end speed receivers. What do you think about that?
I just remember like the game 1 of the 2016 season or 2015. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I
2016 with the Steelers.
With the Redskins versus Steelers on Monday night, and he got torched by Antonio Brown. Every time Antonio Brown went up against him, it was like every single pass got completed. And I remember looking at the stats from that game because I thought, I was just told, everyone was like, Antonio Brown ruined Josh Norman. This is when Josh Norman was.
That was his first game with the Redskins.
Yeah, that was the thing, and it just didn't really work out. And then I went back to look at the stats, and I tried telling everyone that it wasn't Josh Norman, it was Rashad Breeland who was doing terrible. So honestly, I think it's not that good of a move for Carolina. I mean, their safeties and cornerbacks needed help, I guess. So I guess he's an addition. He's definitely there, but I mean, I wouldn't say it's a good addition.
Well, NFL.com has Rashad Breeland's stats allowed in coverage, next-gen stats. Passer rating was 18th with 76.1, and completion percentage was 47.8, which is 8th. It's funny, it actually mentions right here the game with Antonio Brown where he got torched for 8 catches for 126 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's thrived in short yard situations, but has struggled against faster deep ball receivers. Interesting to note that. So we just covered Rashad Breeland with Panthers, and we talked about Adrian Peterson being released by the Cardinals. All right, is there anything new? Just a quick scan. I see nothing. Okay, we will continue more updates. It appears the Packers general manager just released a statement on Jordy Nelson. We cannot thank Jordy enough for all he's given the Green Bay Packers and our community for the past 10 years. He has been an exemplary professional and teammate who has greatly contributed to our success. He will always be a member of the Packers family, and we look forward to his eventual induction into the Packers Hall of Fame. We wish Jordy, his wife Emily, and the rest of their family all the best. So I guess that rules out any possibility of him being re-signed. It doesn't sound like they're planning on bringing him back even at a cheaper price, huh?
Nope, I think they're done with him, I guess. I'm just shocked. They saved $10 million, but if they cut Randall Cobb, who I think Randall Cobb's been done for a minute, they saved $9.5 million. I feel like they should have shaved off Cobb instead and kept Nelson. I don't know. What do I know?
Yeah, what do we know? The New York Giants released their punter last week, Brad Wing. Wing, a former Steeler, had a pretty average year at best in 2014. Is there any chance he comes back to Pittsburgh and competes with Jordan Berry?
No, well, at least I hope not. It's not the competition I want Berry to have, so cancel that. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I don't think it makes sense. He had one uninspiring year, and despite improving in 2015 and 16 with the Giants, he regressed last season as his per-punt average dropped and his touchback numbers increased. He doesn't make any sense here unless if there's an injury. All right, so this team really stole the show for a couple days here. The Cleveland Browns, surprisingly, after making, I think, what was it, not making a trade for like a year or something like that, or only making 4 trades in the past few years, something like that. They made 4 in the span of 36 hours. So in chronological order, stay with me here. They traded a 4th-round pick this year and a 7th-round pick next year to the Miami Dolphins for wide receiver Jarvis Landry. They also then traded the 65th pick in this year's draft, which is the first pick in the 3rd round, to the Buffalo Bills for Tyrod Taylor, the quarterback. Still with me?
Yes.
Then the Browns traded former starting quarterback DeShone Kizer and their 4th and 5th round picks to Green Bay for cornerback Demarius Randall and this year's 4th and 5th round picks. Is that correct?
Yes. In easier terms, it's just the Green Bay Packers and the Browns. They switched 4th and 5th rounds, so the Packers moved up in both the 4th and 5th, and the Browns moved back in the 4th and 5th.
All right, and then finally, the Browns sent defensive tackle Danny Shelton and their 5th round pick to the New England Patriots for their 2019 3rd round pick. All right, the media overreaction. The Browns are good now. Are they actually good now, and will they win a game in 2018 if they haven't improved?
Well, I think the Browns are starting to take a turn in the right direction, but that's really easy to do when you already hit rock bottom. They were 0-16. There's not you can't get worse, really. You could stay lateral or you could get better. So I still don't really like these moves that much. I will say I like the Demarius Randall trade. Since the Browns really didn't give up too much for him, I think he still has potential even through his injury history. But other than that, they gave up the first pick in the third round for a bridge quarterback while they develop a rookie one. At least if they're doing the right thing, I hope that's what they're doing. Watch them just try and roll with Tyrod Taylor and not draft a quarterback. But I didn't quite see the point. You could have brought in Josh McCown. Well, now you can't. I wrote this before. But and let him bridge into the rookie quarterback, and he would have been $10 million, and you wouldn't have had to give up a third-round pick for it. Then, well, I think they got excellent value for Jarvis Landry. I believe he's very overrated and doesn't produce much yardage. It's just a bunch of catches. A lot of his catches come at like the line of scrimmage, and that's where it ends. But like I said, he was cost-effective and an upgrade nonetheless. It might have been a complete waste, though, because he's on a franchise tag, obviously. Unless the Browns could extend him, or they'll have to franchise tag him next year, they could have just paid for a one-year rental, and then they would have lost really hard. But then finally, the Danny Shelton trade is my least favorite. I like Shelton and thought the Browns should have kept him. He's one of the few Browns players I did like. I mean, they got a nice third-round pick from it, but it'll be at the back of the round more than likely, and I don't know. I just think the Browns should have kept Shelton. It's not, and they had to give up a fifth-round pick to do so. Maybe if it was a second-round pick, because that would be more like a beginning of a third round, I could see it. But I feel like the Browns made a poor choice here. I felt like they should have hung on to Shelton for a little bit more and kept using him, because I think he could have fit in well, but it is what it is. What do you think of all the crazy trades?
We got some more breaking news from from Twitter, of course. Defensive tackle Donald Stevenson, formerly of the Chicago Bears, has signed with the... Actually, wait. Donald Stevenson is defensive tackle or offensive tackle? I was going to say he's offensive, isn't he?
He's offensive.
Yes, offensive tackle. My apologies. Of the Denver Broncos, not the Chicago Bears. My apologies. Has signed a one-year, $2.5 million deal with the Cleveland Browns. Just wanted to throw that out there. Oh, yes. So, the Browns. Another move for them. Well, let's put it this way. The Browns appear to be trying to make their team legitimately better for once. It's a refreshing change. The Jarvis Landry trade makes sense to me. They only had Josh Gordon as their true proven receiver, and although I don't think Landry's a game-breaking receiver like Austin already touched upon, he's going to help in the slot. And the Browns didn't have to give up too much for Landry, just 4th and 7th round picks, and considering how many picks they have in the draft the next few years, I think it makes sense. The one I'm more bullish on is the Tyrod Taylor trade. It makes sense in theory. A bridge quarterback to start while your future franchise quarterback develops. But I don't think Taylor is going to be the guy that's going to work for this team. Yes, he didn't have a ton of weapons in Buffalo, and he has talent with his legs and arm, but he doesn't really push the ball downfield often. He just does not take chances throwing the ball down the field, for better or worse. And for that reason, he's not good in situations that demand pushing the ball down the field, like a 2-minute drive, trying to tie or win the game. For all the good things he does do and not turning the football over, he doesn't do what you would want a quarterback to do when he has to lay everything on the line. I don't think he's going to last very long in Cleveland. I could be wrong. It does seem like a good idea in theory, so I could definitely be wrong, but I don't think it's going to last long. I think the Demarius Randall trade is pretty good for the Browns. They don't have to worry about ruining Deshaun Kaiser's confidence by drafting another quarterback, and he gets a chance to learn behind Aaron Rodgers. It's a win-win. The Browns get a playmaking cornerback who does have an injury history and isn't the best cover guy, but he's an athletic playmaker, and let's be honest, the Browns haven't had that for a long time since, Joe Hayden was in his prime, if you will. So, this makes sense for both sides. Again, as Austin mentioned, I don't get the Danny Shelton trade. The Patriots upgraded a weakness along their defensive line, but the Browns essentially lost a good player in the middle of their defense, and they gave up a 5th-round pick just to get a 3rd-round pick next year. I don't think that one makes a ton of sense. And they have made some solid moves here, but they're still a ways from competing with the Steelers at this point. If I had to guess, they're a 3-win team right now, but let's see how they fare after the draft as well. All right, moving on. The Chicago Bears signed free agent wide receiver Allen Robinson. Is this a good move for the Bears?
It's another wide receiver that I think is overrated. I personally hate this move and thought the Bears should have went in another direction. But I suppose I can't blame them. This is both a weak free agent class of wide receivers and a weak draft class of them. I feel like trading for someone probably would have been their best option, though. What do you think?
Yeah, the Bears now have two wide receivers that can struggle to get on the field, the other being Kevin White. I suppose at the right price, it's not the worst idea to take a flyer on him. He did have a great year in 2014, but the expectation should not be too high for him. Some more news. We got a lot going on. It looks as though the Ravens are preparing to sign former Cardinals wide receiver John Brown. I don't really think that's going to be much of anything, but we'll have to see how that goes. And some Steelers news, according to Alex Kozora on Twitter, according to Jeremy Fowler, he was responded by a tweet by Alex Kozora. The Steelers are reportedly restructuring left tackle Alejandro Villanueva's contract, expecting to save $4 million, converting his salary to a base signing bonus. What do you think of that?
That sounds good. I mean, he regressed. I mean, he's still getting the money. It's just, I feel like they're making room. They need cap space to make moves here. They need to sign some of the leftover inside linebackers for some depth, maybe some safety depth if they end up cutting Mike Mitchell. We will see. They need money to move around in free agency. And then if they want to sign Le'Veon Bell to a long-term deal, they'll need that money too. It's whatever they want to do with it, but they need it. I like that move.
Yeah, nothing too surprising, to be honest with you. I think we were kind of expecting that.
Yeah.
All right, so another bit of trades for the Los Angeles Rams. They sent former All-Pro linebacker Alec Ogletree and a 2019 7th-round pick to the New York Giants for their 4th and 6th-round pick in this year's draft. Ogletree just signed a 4-year extension 5 months ago. What do you make of this deal for both the Rams and the Giants?
I love this trade for the Giants, despite Ogletree being a huge cap hit. I loved him and almost wish the Steelers made the trade with slightly different picks since they didn't have the picks that the Rams got. But he would have been a great addition. I hate that the Rams had to get rid of him, but they had to make the cap space. And they improved their corners to counteract losing a great inside linebacker. Overall, though, it's good for both sides for separate reasons. If I was the Rams, I would have liked to hold on to Ogletree, but I see why they needed to get rid of him and dump him off for a actually relatively low amount. So, what do you think of the trade?
At first blush, it appears to be a great trade for the Giants and a bad trade for the Rams, but it actually makes sense for both sides. You just covered it. As far as the Rams go, they did this with their trade of Robert Quinn, too. They're freeing up cap space as they prepare to sign several key players, including Aaron Donald, who could be the best defensive player in football, winning the Defensive Player of the Year award this year. He also made the Pro Bowl in each of his 4 seasons in the NFL, so keeping him is pretty important. On the other side, look, let's be honest, the Giants struggled pretty much everywhere in 2017, and their linebackers were a big problem on their defense. Ross Cockrell was their 7th leading tackler, for crying out loud. Calvin Munson led the linebackers in tackles. Do you know who that is? Because I don't.
I didn't. I don't know who the name is.
So giving up 2 picks in this year's draft may not have been great for the Giants, who are rebuilding, but Ogletree is only 26 and a proven playmaker who will help the defense. So I think this is a win-win for both sides. The Patriots have released tight end Martellus Bennett. The 10-year pro played in 7 games with the Packers last year before being released under, shall we say, interesting circumstances, where the Packers said he had not disclosed an injury to them. And then Bennett went from there on to play 2 games with the Patriots before ending his season on injured reserve. What's the market for the younger of the 2 Bennett brothers? Is it possible he retires?
I'm sure someone will have interest in him. I think he could still play, and a team like the Saints could use a tight end for their playoff push next year. I haven't really heard of many reports saying the teams are interested in him, but I think he will play 1 or 2 more years before retiring. I think he's still got more in the gas tank. What do you think?
It's unclear at this point what Bennett's going to do. He hinted at the possibility of retiring after the 2017 season in October, just months after signing a 3-year deal with the Packers. It's certainly possible Bennett retires, and he's had a good NFL career. But on the other hand, I think he could still be a solid starting tight end for a team. But with questions about his future, I don't think teams are going to offer him a long-term deal with other guys like Jimmy Graham, who is now off the market, and Tyler Eifert on the market. I would think Bennett's not going to get great offers or long-term offers until he fully commits to playing next season. The Buffalo Bills have moved up to the 12th overall pick in this year's draft. What they had to give up was their first first-round pick, the 21st overall pick, and left tackle Cordy Glenn, and their 5th-round pick. They also got the Bengals' 6th-round pick. The Bengals needed an upgrade along the offensive line, and the Bills appear to be making a run at a quarterback in the draft, having 2 first- and second-round picks. The Bills currently only have Nathan Peterman on their roster, a quarterback. Is this a good move for both teams?
I think this was a mistake for the Bills. They had so many picks. I think they could have worked out a deal to get into top quarterback territory without getting rid of a great starting tackle. Totally think if they really wanted a good quarterback, they could have traded the Colts their 2 first-round picks that they have, which was 21 and 22, and their 3rd rounder they just got from the Browns in the Tyrod Taylor trade to get into the top 5 picks. I really think that's all it would have taken. Because the Colts don't really need a quarterback. I mean, that's debatable. They don't really need a quarterback. They're most likely taking defensive end, but I feel like you could entice them because those top positions are mostly taking quarterbacks. That's all they want. If you offered the Colts 2 first-rounders, I think they would have taken it, and the first pick of the 3rd round. It's just, I think that the Bills personally made a mistake. I think they traded the wrong way because I think their plan is to use that 12th pick to get even farther forward. I think that's the idea, at least. That's from what I heard from reports. So I feel like it was just a move that they made a mistake on. They didn't need for the Bengals. Oh, sorry. One more thing about the Bills. They already have 6 picks in the first 3 rounds. That should have been enough to work with. But anyway, for the Bengals, this was an amazing trade. They didn't need to be that high in the draft to get what they needed, so moving back was great for them. They also got a starting left tackle, which is a starting tackle, which is fantastic for them. They needed that. Their offensive line really regressed this year, and that's one of the most important positions in football. So I think they did great in this trade. The Bengals really won. What do you think?
The Bengals really needed a starting left tackle, and they got their man in Cordy Glenn, who should fill in nicely on what's been an unstable offensive line the last 2 years. The Bills seem bent on getting a quarterback in the first round. With only Nathan Peterman on the roster, it makes sense, I think. The Bills still have 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks as well, so like you said, I don't think they're finished trading. I think it was a pretty good move for both sides. I see what you're saying, though. I don't know. I'm a little torn. I think the Bills realize that they must really like the current quarterback crop because there's, 4 or 5 guys that could go in the first round. There's a good chance at least 2 or 3 of those guys are going to be left on the board when they get there. So, I don't know. We'll see. The Miami Dolphins, we talked about it earlier. They traded Jarvis Landry, but they've also released linebacker Lawrence Timmons and are expected to release defensive tackle Ndamukong Suh. Once more, do you think the Steelers should sign Timmons? And for Suh, it was a disappointing year by his standards, just playing in 12 games and posting a career-low 3.5 sacks. He only played 3 out of his 6 years on his contract. So what's next for Suh after you get to Timmons?
For Timmons, I haven't changed since the most recent one of the recent podcasts. I still am lukewarm about it. I'm not really feeling it that much. I mean, if he comes for the right price, sure, but other than that, I'm not really feeling it. For Suh, since he has become a Dolphin, he has basically disappeared in my mind. He needs to find a new home and get a restart. I think for the right price, he could actually go back to the Lions, and it would be a great fit. But the Lions really need a defensive tackle, but only for the right price. He can't be as expensive as he was on the Dolphins, as he hasn't produced this. He didn't produce this year, as you said. I'm sure someone will pay for him, though. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. As far as Timmons goes, yeah, I think if the Steelers sign him, it's just for depth. It makes sense, and he shouldn't start as he doesn't solve the biggest problem at the position, which is playmaking, but it is something. The Suh move is a perfect example of why the Patriots win their division every year. At least 2 of the 3 teams there are rebuilding there every year. The Dolphins were in the playoffs just 2 years ago and are now ready to blow it all up for some reason. I don't get it. Suh is still a good player, but he's starting to get older, and he hasn't been as good as he once was. I suspect he'll take a bit of a pay cut to try to go somewhere where he can win games since he's only been in the playoffs 3 times in his career, and each year his team was eliminated in the first round. Some other notable things to get to. Sammy Watkins signed a 3-year, $48 million contract with the Chiefs. $30 million of it guaranteed. You like that?
I don't think I said it on the podcast, but I was talking to friends when the first when Marcus Peters got traded to the Rams, I thought that Sammy Watkins was going to be part of that trade and send him to the Chiefs because I thought it'd be a perfect fit, even just so they could negotiate with him. And it worked out exactly like that. I think he's really good there. Even through his injury history, I think that having someone next to Tyreek Hill that teams have to put respect on is big for the Chiefs. I can't remember the last time they had two good wide receivers. I mean, I feel like even if Watkins doesn't do that great, you need to put respect on him because he's pretty fast. So I like that move personally. What do you think?
I just don't because he struggles to stay healthy. If that weren't an issue, I'd like it because I've liked what I've seen from him when he's healthy, but he hasn't been on the field enough for me to like it. One last bit of news to get to, unless there's anything else that breaks. The Chargers have extended All-Pro cornerback Casey Hayward to the tune of $36 million over 3 seasons. I know this is a guy you really like. You think it's a good move?
Oh, I think Casey Hayward is very underrated. When people say they're top cornerbacks, I feel like people often disrespect Casey Hayward and leave him out of their top 5. I think he's a top 5 cornerback in the NFL right now. Usually, everyone's mind goes to, Jalen Ramsey, the cornerback duo at the Broncos. I feel like Casey Hayward has really shown that he has one of the best cornerbacks, and people don't really talk about him because he's a Charger. The Chargers' defense you don't think of as one of the great ones that the Broncos have or the Jaguars have. So I feel like he gets pushed underneath, but he's a really great cornerback, and that's what I think that this is a great extension. What do you think?
I'm not super aware of Casey Hayward. I remember him in Green Bay, but I don't remember him being all that great. But I have heard good things about him, so as far as I can tell, I think this is a good move. But I can't add too much more based off of what you've already said. Right before we get to your last bit of news, Austin, that you informed me of, it looks as though the Jets, despite signing Josh McCown, are interested in bringing in Teddy Bridgewater. Is this a good fit?
I don't know how I feel about that. I don't really like the Jets ruining Teddy Bridgewater's career. I like Teddy Bridgewater, but I feel like the Jets need to draft a quarterback. I feel like if you kept Josh McCown and you're going to bring in Teddy Bridgewater, that means you're going to let Teddy take over the reins, which, I mean, I guess I have no problem with, but I felt like they should have started new with someone that they could develop themselves, if you know what I'm saying.
Not very logical.
Yeah, it's just not a very logical move because they're gonna have to pay Teddy Bridgewater a good amount of money too. I think I would think because he was a starter at one point. And he was never like he was bad. I feel like he was a decent starter, but what do you think?
I don't know. I agree with you. I don't think there's much more to add to that. I just don't think that makes a ton of sense. And last but not least, Taylor Gabriel has been signed by the Chicago Bears. They finally get another receiver. Good idea?
I think that was a better move than the Allen Robinson move, to be honest with you. I like him better because he's probably going to be cheaper, and he was the Falcons' number 2, but he was really... I think he's underrated. I think he's going to be good as a Bear.
As strange as it sounds, I think he actually has more upside.
Yeah, no, he totally does.
Yep. Alrighty, our one last scan of Twitter has revealed no new news.
Did we talk about Eli Rogers?
That's right. So we'll just get to it now. Not just Eli Rogers news, which you want to just go right ahead and say it.
Yeah, Eli Rogers is not getting his tendered. He is not coming back to the Steelers. The Steelers are letting him walk. I suspected it for a while now. I thought it was going to happen, and it just makes the need for a wide receiver in the draft more important with him going, and a need for a punt returner now because Eli Rogers was doing the job sometimes. I feel like you need more. We haven't had a good one. I feel like it increases that need as well. But what do you think?
It was quite a fall for someone that might have been the breakout player of 2016.
Yeah, he fell really quick. He burned down really fast.
Any chance he comes back at the veteran minimum to training camp?
I think another team is going to try and pay him. I think another team is still going to see that he showed something in 2016, and they're going to actually pay him a better than veteran minimum.
All right, time will tell. One last thing, the Steelers have placed a 6th-round tender on Anthony Chickillo, which I believe is $1.9 million.
Yeah.
So he will be returning for 2018. So that'll wrap up part 1 of Season 3, Episode 3 of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Check us out on Twitter at @Stronger_Steel and email us with any questions at Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thanks again, and we'll be right back for part 2. All right, welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast, part 2 of season 3, episode 3. We will be going over interior offensive line prospects. And before we get to that, of course, there was some NFL news to get to. Austin, what was that?
Yes, in the 5 minutes we took an intermission. Nicole Roby-Coleman got a 3-year extension with a value of more than $15.75 million, with $8 million in guaranteed. The LA Rams continue to love their cornerbacks, and the Roby-Coleman, I think, was deserving. I think he was a really good backup and stuff. But so good for them. They're still paying their corners. They just want all the corners in the world.
Yeah, good for them, I guess. But yeah, we're on to the interior offensive line, the dog days of our previews, I guess, because not a lot of people love to talk about linemen, but we will get through it, of course. But first, we got some Steelers news to talk about. Yesterday, William Gay announced on his Instagram account that he is going to be released from the Pittsburgh Steelers, marking the end of an era. The 11-year pro, I believe, spent all but one season in Pittsburgh. That was 2012. He's the only player in NFL history to return 5 straight interceptions for touchdowns. Gay, world-class type of person. With his release, Ben Roethlisberger is now the only player remaining from the 2008 Super Bowl winning squad. Is there anything you want to say in remembrance of William Gay's career, if you will?
It's sad to see him go. He was so close to getting that pick 6 record. He almost had it in Buffalo when we went just last year, and it's sad to see him go, but Mike Hilton's ready to step in. Mike Hilton is ready to be that guy and take his slot, and I wish William Gay the best.
I'll never forgive Artie Burns for taking that penalty that cost William Gay that record. He is tied with Rod Woodson for the most pick sixes in Steelers history. Big play Willie Gay will be missed for sure. A whipping boy in Pittsburgh, one of Mike Tomlin's first ever draft picks, a 5th-round selection in 2007. He really struggled early on in Pittsburgh before kind of coming around in 2011, and after returning in his second stint, he really became a fan favorite, a guy that, despite not having really the best athletic tools, he was very smart, and he was a very hard worker. He talked about passing the torch just like Deshae Townsend once did for him. He's definitely going to be missed, and although I will say that we did all see this coming, he only played in, I think, 20% of the defensive snaps this year, losing his job to Mike Hilton, and really just becoming a dime safety. So it did make sense, and sadly, another great person, meets the business end of football. So hopefully he catches on somewhere, and if not, it's been a wonderful career for someone that used to be the whipping boy of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll never forget reading an article, and my mom will remember this too. We read an article talking about the best pass defenses in the NFL, and the Steelers were ranked in the lower half because this was a team that regularly suited up William Gay. I will never forget reading that statement. And, he turned out to be pretty good himself, so he definitely earned all of the accolades that he did get. The big news everyone has been talking about for months now, which we've talked about time and time out for the last year plus, Le'Veon Bell. The Steelers tagged him for the 2nd year in a row, and he has not signed it. He did threaten to sit out some games this year and potentially retire if not offered a minimum of $14.5 million per season, which is what the value of the franchise tag is. The Steelers offered $13.3 million a year on a contract last offseason and reportedly came up from that this year, but Bell said that the two sides are closer, but he's not moving on his end. So I guess let's talk a little bit about Le'Veon Bell. What do you think about all this? And also, he had a live Instagram video last week saying that he's not going to sit out games. He said it's going to be the same as last year. But I guess, do you believe him? What do you think of everything? How should the Steelers proceed?
I really feel like at this point it's getting a little bit. It's time to give up. It's obviously the two sides aren't going to match. The two sides aren't going to get there because the Steelers, he said himself last year, the Steelers offered him a $13.3 million contract that he was close to accepting. and he didn't. And now he said this year that the sides are closer. So in my mind, the Steelers offered him probably $14.5 million, matching the franchise tag per season, and didn't go over that. I think he wants $16 million. And at this point, I almost think, not this season, but next season, it's just time to let him walk. You can't franchise tag him again. It's going to be way too expensive. Just let him walk and hit the market and see what happens. I honestly struggle to believe that a team is going to offer a running back over what the Steelers did. It's really going to be hard. I'm assuming that the Steelers' offer was $14.5 million per season. We'll leave it at that. A team would have to offer over $14.5, and he'd have to want to move. His mother wanted him to, was so happy he signed with the Steelers in the first place because their whole family is Steelers fans. They basically had to relocate, and for what? How much more money? My idea is no team is going to offer him that much more money that it's worth leaving the Steelers and what they offer. So I feel like it was almost more... I feel like they should have, just to get it over with, rescinded the tag this year. They should just rescind it and let him hit the market. Let him see what it's like to be a top running back in today's age. He's stuck in this idea that he can fix this market, that he can make running backs more valuable. But truth is, they're not going to get more valuable because he gets a big deal. Adrian Peterson got a $14 million deal early in his not early in his career, with the Vikings at one point when he was doing good, and it did not change the running back market at all. Nothing moved. It was just Adrian Peterson, and then they came back down. It immediately crashed back down and back to where it is because running back is not that important of a position. It's just how it goes. So I don't think the only two possible teams I think could do it would be the Browns and the 49ers. And I mean, maybe it's a Browns move, and if he wants to go to the Browns, fine. If he wants to, he's going to be accepting losing as well. You have to think that. I mean, he might have this idea in his head that he will change around the Browns, but that's not going to happen.
They're taking Saquon Barkley, too, let's be honest.
They're taking Saquon Barkley. They don't want Le'Veon Bell. They are stuck with Saquon Barkley because he's going to be great. It's just... And the 49ers have Carlos Hyde. How much of an upgrade is it? It's almost like the Kirk Cousins situations where the Vikings spent so much money on a quarterback and they could have improved everywhere. It'd be like the 49ers. They already have Carlos Hyde. I mean, he's not the greatest in the world. I think he's top 10 in the league right now. But, like, it's still like, is it really an upgrade? How big of an upgrade is it for you to spend so much money on a position where you could have spent half the price on a formidable guy? I think at this time, it's time to give up on Le'Veon Bell after this season. I think what's going to happen next season, I think Bell's going to be hit in the face by teams only offering him, like, hey, we'll give you $14 million, and that's it. And he's going to realize that the Steelers offered him the most, probably. I have this slight idea that the 49ers might be like, hey, we'll give you that $60 million, but I honestly doubt it. It's really, I really think that after this all has settled, I thought that the best idea would to take off the tag, rescind it, and let him hit the market, and then see what it's like outside of the Steelers. Because I think that last year I was dumbfounded when I found out. I was like, oh, the Steelers are probably going to offer him $11 million. He wants to be the highest paid. I was like, that you know what? He deserves it. $11 million, it'll completely give him way more than the next best running back. It blew my mind when he didn't want $12 million, and that's what the Steelers offered. I was literally dumbfounded. I'm now trying to get used to this. I'm trying to get used to that. There's no way we're getting Le'Veon Bell unless he takes a very large amount of money, way better than the next best running back. So, honestly, like I said, I think it would just be best to let him hit the market and see what happens. What do you think on the whole scenario?
I just want to mention that, first with the Steelers, I think it was a mistake for them to come up from their offer last year. Because what did Bell do in this past year that made him worth more this year? Because he had 400 more touches, and his efficiency was decreased as far as receiving and rushing. So, I guess that just doesn't make sense to me. Now, as far as Bell goes, I find him to look bad in this situation. I just don't see how you could look at him as being not a bad guy in this situation. Now, you can talk about wanting to maximize your earnings and whatnot, but I think Bell is delusional, to be completely honest with you. He has said he wants to be paid like a number one running back and a number two receiver. I get where he's coming from, but that's not how it works. He might be the number two receiver as far as the Steelers' statistics go, but he's not. That's part of his job description. He's supposed to catch passes. It's not like if what's his name? Duke Johnson. I know he was the number 2 receiver in Cleveland, but like, say he was the number 4 leading receiver like most running backs are on teams. You don't pay your running back to be a number 1 running back and a number 4 receiver. You pay them to be a number 1 running back. That's how it works. So that doesn't make any sense. And on top of everything, Austin mentioned like the offer he got last year. Not only did he get that, but he was also told by his agent and his mother to sign the deal. What kind of dink doesn't listen to those two people?
Who knows? It's really so stupid. Like, it's just, what? Dude, the 2 most important people probably to tell you about what you should do with your life, and he doesn't want to listen, but...
You know what that tells me?
What?
This is personal. This is personal to him. It's no longer about business. It's not about setting the market like he's saying. It's something personal. He believes he's valued at that much, and he thinks that the Steelers lowballing him, if you will, he takes offense to that. So I think that's partially why he's gone delusional here, and he thinks he's worth that much. I agree with you. I think the Steelers would be smart in thinking, well, let's be honest, he's not going to be on the Steelers in 2019, obviously. The Steelers have to start planning for the future. And if he's thinking about sitting out games, which I think would be ridiculous, the Steelers need to almost, because if he's that delusional, thinking he's worth that much, after not listening to his mother and agent and stuff like that, making it a personal matter, what's to say he won't sit out games this upcoming year? I mean, I know it sounds crazy to think he'll walk away from that kind of money, but maybe he would just be dumb enough to do it. So I think the Steelers need to operate in the form of they may have to go without him at some points this year. So take that for what it's worth. I think the Steelers have to at least draft a running back this year. We can get into the specifics of that later. But I just don't see Bell. Bell's just does not look good in this slate right now. He would be making, the next highest paid running back is Devontae Freeman at $8 million. He'd want double that. I don't get it. I think the Steelers, yes.
Steelers Depot thinks is quite. They think that the deal is going to be done by July. They think that a long-term deal is going to happen. I find that crazy.
Really? What makes them say that?
He just has a feeling about it, that he thinks that because of last year, because of how close he was to signing it, that he's gonna cave and sign it. I was reading reports from him. That dumbfounded me as well. I think he's not going to budge.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think he's gone so far now that it wouldn't make sense for him to do that at this point. I don't know, but just the whole thing doesn't make sense. And think about it. With the Browns, they're getting Saquon Barkley, who, if he is what everyone thinks he's going to be Le'Veon Bell that can also break the big play, right?
Yes.
Maybe not in pass protection, but that's the tertiary aspect of the job. And Barkley isn't going to have a quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger to help either. So you're talking about a guy that's going to do what you do, but better at a fraction of the price. Look at other guys, Frank Gore, DeMarco Murray, Jonathan Stewart. All these guys have been cut. And Bell has a ton of touches, 400 plus more touches last year. There's no reason to think that it would be smart to give him that kind of money. It's ludicrous. And I think that Bell really is, I don't know. I don't know what's going through his mind. I think what he's doing is dumb, and it's not good. I think the Steelers, I still think they should go with the tag, but they need to operate under the idea that he might not play for at least part of the season, and potentially rescind the tag. I think that they should definitely do that depending on how the draft goes, because I just think it's ridiculous what's going on. But in any case, we'll be talking plenty about this throughout the rest of the offseason, depending on what's going on. Some other NFL news, because that is what's going on. Malcolm Butler, formerly of the New England Patriots, who sat in Super Bowl 52, is anticipated to sign a 5-year deal worth more than $61 million with the Titans. What do you think about that?
That's a lot of money. That's like an average of 12.2 a season, if I did my math correctly. That's an amazing amount of money for a guy that got benched in the Super Bowl. I mean, still, I'm just impressed.
Now, only $30 million is guaranteed, so I will say that.
Okay, so it's less than half of it's guaranteed, but still, that's still a crazy amount of money.
Mm-hmm. Running back Jonathan Stewart, the Panthers' all-time leading rusher, is expected to sign with the Giants. Is that a good move?
I mean, I guess they needed a running back. They haven't really had one, but Jonathan Stewart has always been just okay to me. He's been nothing special.
He's a power back, right?
Yeah, he's more of a power back.
I mean,
they don't have an offensive line.
I was gonna say, I mean, is he really worse than first name, last name? What's their names?
The running back for Giants?
What's his name? Oh my goodness!
I can't think of.
When I hear it, I'm gonna remember. Oh boy. So our point is that the Giants don't have really well-known running backs. That's our point. You have the name? I can't.
No. Orleans Darkwa, Wayne Gallman, and Paul Perkins. They're just a bunch of committee.
Yep, a bunch of bad committee.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that makes more sense. But in any case, that's what's going on, and nothing new going on as far as the other news we talked about beforehand. The Jaguars did sign Andrew Norwell, the left guard from the Panthers. 5 years, $66.5 million. Nice to see the big guy get some money, huh?
Yeah, that's good. I think he got paid well, and that just improves the already good Jaguars offensive line. So
good thing the Steelers play them once more next year. Yay. The Steelers are expected to be releasing free safety Mike Mitchell, saving approximately $5 million in cap space, but have indicated they'd be willing to bring him back at a lower price. Backup safety J.J. Wilcox has been told he's going to get more playing time in 2018. So what do you make of all this?
Well, I want J.J. Wilcox and Mike Mitchell to both leave, and then maybe bring in a free agent cheap guy, and then also draft the safety, so have them both replaced. Because let's be real here, when they're telling backup safety J.J. Wilcox that he's going to get more playing time in 2018, that doesn't make me feel good. I look at J.J. Wilcox as like a mini Mike Mitchell, just younger. He's literally 1 inch shorter than him, and he's the same style player where he tries to hit really hard and force turnovers that way, and he kind of whiffs on tackles a lot. And that just doesn't sound enticing to me. After seeing Mike Mitchell fall, and I mean, he's just been getting worse and worse, I don't want the J.J. Wilcox type. I'd rather have a type that tackles and doesn't make plays than anything else. I just want a guy that's reliable and stuff. So the Steelers saying that they want J.J. Wilcox back does not make me really excited or happy, especially when they want him playing more. And then with Mike Mitchell, I think it is time to go. I almost don't even want him to come back at all. There's very little part of me that wants him, because what is he going to contribute? He obviously didn't contribute much as a tackler. He didn't contribute much as a playmaker. What is he going to contribute, even as a backup, to just bring him in? You could just have another backup. You might have that guy that's going to get burnt every other play, but you know what? He'll get an interception. Or you'll have that guy that just makes tackles, like a few a game, but he's pretty good in coverage and doesn't do anything else. I would rather that than have Mike Mitchell as a backup, because Mike Mitchell is one of the worst safeties in the league this year. It's just how it is. Why would you bring that back as a backup, even for cheaper? I can't imagine him taking that great of a pay cut. So that's what I think on the subject. What do you think?
Well, as far as the former goes, being Mike Mitchell, listeners would know that I've been wanting this for a while. I think it's the obvious and correct move. Mitchell's time in Pittsburgh was okay, but too often he found himself unable to back up his antics with his play, and he quickly became a whipping boy for the fans. Mitchell did play through a lot of tough injuries, and he does deserve credit for trying to play, but it's also reasonable at the same time to wonder if he did miss a few games in 2014 or 2016, or even last year, would it have helped his play down the stretch? Would you have rather had a Robert Golden at, say, 95% as opposed to a Mike Mitchell at 75%?
I feel like Robert Golden at 95% sounds better than Mike Mitchell at 70%.
At the very least, maybe, I'm not saying Golden's a great player or anything, but I think Golden's more of a coverage guy than he is a run stopper, isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not saying much, but the point is that Mitchell was clearly slow, especially last year. I mean, only 2 pass breakups, he just was not good. We've already been through it. I think sitting out a game or two and trying to recuperate may have helped him a little bit more, but instead he really struggled, and I think that's how fans are going to remember his time as disappointing because of that. It's possible he returns at a lower price, but I don't want it to happen. But considering the outlook at the position, based on how the draft might go, it could be a necessary evil next year. And that's especially because I wouldn't feel comfortable with J.J. Wilcox earning more playing time next year. He played all right in the first 2 to 3 games of the year before riding the bench and then eventually not even playing on special teams as well. I don't think bringing him back makes any sense at all. I don't get it at all. So we'll see how that goes. Plus he makes like $3 million a year. I don't know what they see in him, especially after, if it was reversed where he didn't play and then started to play at the end, I'd be like, okay, you saw something at the end, but I'm confused by it, to be honest with you.
What can you say? It's a stupid decision. Hopefully those reports are like fake or something.
Hashtag fake news. Hopefully the Steelers draft a safety or 2 in the draft. And speaking of the draft, it's time to look at the interior offensive line. So we're going to be looking at guards and centers mostly. So let's look at what the Steelers have. We'll start with the starters. David DeCastro at right guard. He's got 4 years remaining on his deal. $5,687,500 in 2018. A total of $41,750,000 in total. Starting left guard Ramon Foster has 1 year remaining on his deal at $3.591 million in 2018. Center Marquise Pouncey has 2 years remaining on his deal. He's got $10.55 million in 2018 and a total of $18.5 million in total. Backup guard and center BJ Finney has 1 year remaining on his entry-level deal at $630,000 in 2018. Or actually, no. He was an exclusive rights free agent. My apologies. So that's not an entry-level contract. So that's what he'll be earning, $630,000 in 2018. Only one free agent loss, Mike Matthews, who was on IR, an exclusive rights free agent this year. He was an undrafted free agent for the Browns in 2016 and got hurt this past year. Didn't even make it to the practice squad. He could return to camp, but is likely to be cut before making the final roster. Anything else you wanted to add here?
Nope, I have nothing to say.
All right, what do the Steelers have with their starters and current backup?
So starting with the guards, the starters are David DeCastro and Ramon Foster. DeCastro was the best guard in the league last year, in my opinion, but not just in mine. Pro Football Talk had DeCastro as their best, too. He's going to be a long-time starter for the Steelers, as he is one of the best in the league. Him and his Pro Bowl level skills are going nowhere fast. Ramon Foster, on the other hand, may not have much more left in the tank. More than likely, this may be the last season for the second longest tenured Steeler at the moment. He has been above average for the Steelers. Not amazing, but a good starter for all the time. A good starter for most of the time. And I really appreciate what he has brought to the table. Luckily, since Foster probably will retire following this season, the Steelers seem to have his replacement on the roster already in B.J. Finney. Finney has been a reliable backup for the Steelers for a few years now, and every time he comes in, he is exciting to watch. You almost never know that a backup is in, and that's because he is starting caliber. I can't praise him enough for waiting patiently with the Steelers for his time to start, as it has taken a long time, and he could have gotten a bigger contract elsewhere by now. At least I think so. But for this season, he is the backup guard or center used for injuries, but I can't wait for him to be starting soon. Lastly, the Steelers have center Marquise Pouncey, and he's been a decent starter too. This past season, I personally thought was his best, as I always thought he was a bit overrated, but he really impressed me this season with his speed and ability to get to the next level after the initial block. So all around, I'm very excited about this group going into next season. That's all I have to say on what we got. What do you think of what the Steelers got?
New breaking news, some Steelers news to inform you about. Austin, the Cleveland Browns have signed free agent offensive lineman Chris Hubbard to a 5-year deal worth $37.5 million with nearly $18 million guaranteed. More help up front for Cleveland, according to Ian Rappaport. Wow.
Well deserved. Chris Hubbard gets a reunion with Todd Haley. Todd Haley knew what he was getting because obviously he worked with the Steelers for so long and he saw what Hubbard was to the team, and it's well deserved. We knew that the Steelers weren't keeping Hubbard. He knew he was going to be a starter somewhere, and I imagine for that amount of money, the Browns are betting on him starting next season, and we're going to have to face him twice a year. So
that'll be interesting. It's unfortunate because you don't want him to go to a division rival, especially one that appears to be making several good moves. But we'll have to see how that goes. But obviously, a well-deserved contract. Hubbard was a very good player in replacement of Marcus Gilbert this past year, so we'll have more information on that in upcoming episodes. But thanks again to Chris Hubbard for all his time in Pittsburgh as well. Anyways, as far as what the Steelers have, as far as interior linemen go, starting with Maurkice Pouncey, the center, the Steelers have one of the top centers in the NFL. A proven player when healthy, Pouncey has been the anchor of some of the Steelers' best offensive teams in history, and while I believe him to be a little bit overrated, there's no diminishing his talent. He is probably one of, if not the most athletic centers in football. Excuse me. And that makes him a huge part of this offensive line. He does struggle against bigger defensive tackles, but otherwise doesn't have many flaws. The same could be said of starting right guard David DeCastro. Though I would argue the last 2 to 3 years, he's actually improved his game to a new level, being as mobile and athletic as Pouncey while being even more consistent. DeCastro's biggest problem is that he can on occasion take too many penalties in bad moments, but he even improved in that area in 2017, cutting his total penalties in half from the previous season. I truly believe now David DeCastro is a top 5 guard in the NFL. Starting left guard Ramon Foster is in the final year of his contract, a well-liked player, the elder statesman on the line, and as Austin already pointed out, the second longest tenured player on the team. Foster's always flown under the radar in his career, but has carved out a great one in the NFL. I think when we look back at Foster's career, we should remember the consistency with which he played. He was never a flashy guy, but as his teammates on the line, he always showed up when needed. I believe Foster's time as a starter is nearing its end and actually could be over sooner than expected. I think it's likely he'll remain the starter at left guard this season, but I think it's also possible backup B.J. Finney could take his spot this year, certainly if not next year. Foster's run blocking diminished a bit in 2017, and Finney hasn't missed much of a beat in each of the last 2 seasons in spot duty. He's clearly the future at the position, and while it's possible I could see Foster returning as a backup for another year or two, he could just as easily and more likely will retire or leave at the end of the season too. Re-signing B.J. Finney next offseason or sooner is something the Steelers should look into pretty soon, I would imagine, because he will be a free agent at the end of this season. Speaking of free agency, what's the need here?
There is none. Steelers have their starters and backups set. I don't think they should bring anyone in, so that's what I think. Do you think there's a free agency need?
No, there's no point. The Steelers have their starters and top backup waiting. Adding a free agent at this point would not be. There wouldn't be a point to it. What about drafting?
Sort of. It's a very low need, though. That can wait until next year if necessary, but I would still say this would be a good pick in the 7th round with one of the 2 picks the Steelers have in the 7th round, but they don't have to address it this year. It's not a need to pick up position. What do you think?
I would say there is a need this year, but it's not a high need. Bolstering the depth in anticipation of Ramon Foster leaving or retiring at the end of the year, the Steelers have no need to draft a guy earlier than the 5th round, say. I prefer the lineman, if one is drafted, as an interior lineman as opposed to a tackle. All right, so let's take a look at some of the prospects. Give me your first one. What's his name? Where is he from? What's going on?
The first one is Frank Ragnow. He's a center/guard from Arkansas. He is 6'5", 309 pounds. At the combine, he only participated in the bench press, and he got 26 reps on the bench press, which is about average. As a true freshman, he played 9 games as a center, but from that season on, he played mostly guard. In his 2016 season, he played all of his games. And that's really all the overview I have for him. For positives, with his size, he has the right build to be an NFL-ready starter. As for what he does on the field, he is always ready, not wasting time to get into his position. As for his snap, it's solid, not the greatest, but still quick and accurate. During the play, he is quick to get into a guy as a down blocker and gets an adequate bend into contact at the point of where contact is made. He thinks fast, often locating his second blocking target really early on, and when he transitions smoothly to the second block, with good timing and force. He has a highly wanted toughness from a lineman, making sure he finishes his blocks. He also can adjust to bull rushes, anchoring down to stop them from progressing. He also doesn't sit around on plays and will always find a man to block where he's left uncovered. Finally, he has strong hands to cinch defenders and ride blocks all the way out. That's for positives. As for negatives, as an athlete, he is no more than average, and when in open space, he can get a little heavy-footed when he has to make a sudden redirection against moving targets. He's going to have to go down in pad level as a move blocker in the NFL, as what he's got going on now won't work there. After contact, he doesn't set up his base very well, causing him to have balance issues and end up on the ground more than he needs to be. But probably his biggest downfall is that he may struggle against quick twitch opposition, often struggling to recognize when twist comes. Then there's also the problem that he's coming off a season-ending high ankle injury, which could hold him back. But to review Ragnow, he had starting experience at both center and guard, making him a very flexible player. An NSC area scout has described him as a tough guy and leader in that locker room. He's got the personality that you want your center to have, and he's got a good strength. I see him as an early starter in the league, and he has been compared to Nick Martin because of it. However, the injury is coming off of, as well as some problems with staying connected to more athletic defensive linemen, may hold him back in the NFL. Still, he's projected to go as early as the second round and as late as the back of the fourth round. So that is Frank Ragnow. Who is your first athlete?
I have Will Clapp, mostly center but can also play guard from LSU, standing at 6'5" and 311 pounds. The redshirt junior performed pretty well at the combine for offensive lineman, was not the top at any particular drills, but scored pretty well. He was a model of consistency in his 3 years at LSU. As a freshman, he made the freshman All-American team after starting all 12 games for the Tigers at right and left guard in 2015. He followed that season up with the first team All-SEC honor in 2016, where he started 11 games at left guard as a sophomore. Last season, Clapp started all 13 games at center and again made the All-SEC team. That's a total of 36 starts over 3 seasons, 13 at center, 12 at left guard, and 11 at right guard. 2 All-SEC honors and 1 All-American honor. As far as the strengths go, as evidenced by what I just said, Clapp can play multiple positions and has a full season of college experience at both guard positions and the center position in a pro-style offense. Clapp has pretty good but not great size at 6'5", weighing 311 pounds at the NFL Combine. Clapp has good footwork along the line and has pretty solid technique, being able to turn his body to act as a wall between the defenders in the space where the ball carrier is supposed to go. He's shown the ability to pin down blocks against smaller players and has good hand strength to hold on to his blocks for that extra second coaches are always looking for. A very intelligent player at LSU, he showed the ability to make good reads, diagnosing blitzes and potential protection breakdowns before the quarterback even noticed them. Clapp showed great recognition with combination blocks and pass protection, that is, assisting the guard or center with the block before disengaging to take on a blitzing player. He has the ability to anchor with his technique and absorb stronger pass rushers, and he's a pretty hard worker. As far as his negatives go, Clapp's arm length is shorter than that of the average NFL offensive lineman, and his build favors his upper body compared to his lower body, meaning he's not going to be that good at pushing the pile and is often caught off balance in pass protection, allowing him to be easily beaten. Long-arm defenders are going to be able to work past Clapp despite his strength, and he struggles against speedy interior rushers. He doesn't have great athleticism as well, which I was alluding to, which is going to hurt his ceiling and draft stock. So as far as the bottom line goes, Clapp is an experienced and versatile player right now, but he's not ready to take on the NFL interior pass rushing specialists, and his below-average athleticism will probably force him to be a primary center. But with a year or two of development and adding some muscle to his lower body, Clapp could become a good backup and potentially below-average to average starter in this league. His durability and knowledge will help in this regard. He won't be without his flaws, but many offensive linemen in this league have flaws anyways, so he could definitely make it in the NFL, but don't expect him to be a Pro Bowler at the same time. Most mock drafts I've seen have him going between the 5th and 7th rounds. So Austin, now that we've taken a look at Will Clapp, what is one of your offensive line prospects?
My next one is Sean Welsh. He's a guard/center from Iowa. He's 6'2" and 296 pounds. At the Combine, he ran a 5.43 40-yard dash, and he had 20 reps on the bench press. The bench press is a little bit weak for offensive linemen, but still. Most of Iowa's line is filled with huge players, but Sean Welsh is an exception at only 6'2". I say only, but for an offensive lineman, that's pretty small. But his versatility, toughness, and mobility earned him the starting role in Iowa since his freshman season. He has played as a guard for most of his college career, but has experience at tackle and worked out at center in the spring of 2016, which is what he may end up as in the NFL due to his size. So what's good about him is, despite not being that big for a guard, he has good lower body thickness with a broad waist. Because of this, he has a low center of gravity, which provides Welsh a solid base and contact balance through the rep. As an athlete, he is adequate, at least enough to transition from guard to center if necessary. One of his best attributes, though, is that he has been well coached to the point where he can excel in double teams, which is very good. Double teams are obviously the hardest thing you could do as an offensive lineman to take that on, and he has actually done really well with it in college. He comes out low on his assignments and maintains quality pad level with initial quickness to perform his reach blocks with both leverage and proper positioning. As for his movement, he uses short controlled steps in his change of direction to help him move easier, and he can redirect his weight to adjust his target point on the second level. And finally, for the positives, he mirrors effectively in pass protection. So what's bad about him? I mentioned a few times in this overview of Welsh, but he's undersized compared to the rest of the NFL as an interior lineman. When in open space, his athletic ability is nothing special, really lacking speed. As a blocker, he's not very effective as a drive blocker and or pull blocker since he doesn't have the pop behind his pads. He has struggled against athletic defensive tackles in the past when they use sudden arm moves, often leaving him on the ground. Also, Welsh tends to panic and start grabbing when his hand technique gets messed up, and that's obviously not good because you'll get holding calls every time in the NFL. And finally, he's inconsistent as a finisher when he's blocking. So to review, more than likely, Welsh will be moving to center when he gets drafted in the NFL. However, the fact that he could switch from center to guard provides a lot of value for him, and he's projected to go between the 5th and 6th round because of that versatility that he can provide to a team. Even if he's smaller for a guard, he could still be put out there occasionally if necessary. So who is your second prospect?
All right. My second prospect is guard Sam Jones from Arizona State. Standing at 6'5", 290 pounds, the redshirt junior actually did not attend the NFL Combine this year. He declared for the NFL Draft a few months ago when his coach Todd Graham was fired at Arizona State. Last year he earned all Pac-12 honors after starting 13 games at left guard. He had a good start to his sophomore season in 2016 as well, starting 7 games at left guard, but a foot injury ended his season. As a redshirt freshman, Jones played in 12 games, starting 5 at both tackle positions and left guard as well. His strengths: Jones is a good athlete and displays good mobility while remaining square to the defender. Both when he's asked to pull and when he works to the second level of the defense. He fluidly redirects his weight when engaging moving targets at the second level and has good leverage at the point of attack. Similarly to Will Clapp, he is good at turning defenders away from the rushing lane, giving the ball carrier ample room to run through the hole. He has quick and ready hands in pass protection and has good hand placement when engaging pass rushers. His weaknesses, though: Jones carries a thin frame for an NFL guard. At only 290 pounds, he can be easily pushed around, and he's going to struggle with the one-on-one battles despite his good athleticism. And as I said, he's able to get to where he needs to go, but he can get overpowered at the point of attack. He struggles with picking up complicated blitzes and stunts along the defensive front, allowing his quarterback to face pressure far too often when the offensive line was not outnumbered by the pass rushers. Despite the potential that exists with adding weight, Jones was never able to successfully do that in college, which raises a red flag at the NFL level. So the bottom line, Jones has good athleticism at the guard position, which translates well into the NFL, and he could theoretically be a good pulling guard in that sense. But the question Jones is going to face is whether or not he can add muscle, and if he can do so while keeping his athleticism and mobility in the process. Right now, Jones is not ready to take on NFL defensive linemen at all. He's not strong enough, and he doesn't have the best technique to combat that. Furthermore, his struggles in pass protection mean he won't be and should not be a starter out of the gate. He really could have benefited from another year at ASU, but felt it was best to go pro rather than learn a new offensive system for a year. For now, his best chance of playing early would be in a zone blocking scheme only. Sam Jones projects as a late-round pick who could actually be undrafted as well, who has the potential to be a decent NFL lineman, but he needs a decent amount of work before he earns that playing time. He is definitely a project player. Austin, can you tell me another prospect the Steelers fan should be paying attention to?
The next one is Colby Gossett. He's a true guard from Appalachian State. He is 6'5", 315 pounds. At the Combine, he had a 5.2-second 40-yard dash, and he had 32 reps on the bench press. Gossett is one of the top prospects from Appalachian State for NFL scouts. He has been a starter since the 2014 season, where he would have started immediately that season, but an injury held him out of the first 4 games. But from there, he started in 7 of 8 games he was active for, and was a starter since then, mostly at guard, but he did have a few stints at tackle as well. He was a first-team All-Sun Belt pick in 2017, as well as a first-team All-Conference pick in his junior year after standing up strong to teams like Tennessee and Miami. So what's good about him is after the injury in freshman year, Gossett never looked back, starting in 46 straight games as a reliable starter. His body type is that of an NFL-ready starter with thick calves and a broad waist. He comes off the ball with formidable quickness that you want out of a guard, and then he has a mass and strength to create movement and secure his down blocks. But thinking of his strength, he is also one of the strongest guards in this draft. Amongst guards, he had the fourth most bench press reps with 32. Finally, Gossett does the best against bull rushing defensive tackles, where he could play with enough anchor to stop the DT from getting anything done. So what's negative about him is he has a slight hitch in his punch, which allows the defenders to land first, and he tends to play with his hands too wide. His feet are also heavy when he moves, and also plays with a certain leg tightness. Gossett has a lean that he uses to make up for his sluggish mirror, which leads to him getting knocked off balance quite a bit. One of his worst traits, however, is that he's not good on pull blocks, struggling to connect consistently on the second level. Then finally, he's unable to keep blocks centered after contact. So to review all of this, in big games like against Georgia, he struggled against the stiff competition, and therefore is unlikely to be ready to take on NFL competition. However, he has a frame that can be appealing to NFL teams and will help him get drafted somewhere between the 4th and 5th rounds, maybe even the beginning of the 6th. Teams might try stashing him on their practice squad so he could work on his technique some more and get more NFL ready, because right now he is not ready to be a starter. So let's hear about your final prospect.
All right, my last prospect is kind of an under-the-radar guy. It's Skylar Phillips, the guard from Idaho State. Standing at 6'3" and 324 pounds, a redshirt senior at Idaho State. He also did not participate at the NFL Combine. Over 5 years at Idaho State, Phillips was used in 4 of the 5 offensive line positions, where he played both guard and tackle positions. As a true freshman in 2013, Phillips started in all 12 games, with 5 of them coming at left guard and the other 7 coming at right tackle. The following season, he started in all 10 games that he played in at right guard. His junior season in 2015, he started 5 games at right guard, 3 games at left tackle, and 1 game at right tackle. He lost most of his 2016 season, though, after sustaining an injury. He returned in 2017 after redshirting from his 2016 injury-filled season and was named third-team All-American by the Associated Press and was this year's first-team All-Conference selection. He also played in this year's Senior Bowl. His strengths, according to NFL.com, Phillips has been described as an enforcer by an AFC East scout. That's exactly the kind of player you'd want on your offensive line. The description is fitting, as Phillips possesses very strong arms with a powerful, compact frame. Despite being short for a tackle, Phillips looked good in pass protection at left tackle. He possesses good lateral quickness and remains balanced when kicking out. Coaches will love to see his tape because on a lot of plays, Phillips can be seen driving or knocking down the smaller defender he is engaged with to the ground. He has a flexible lower body, and due to his compact frame, he's able to keep a lower pad level and has good technique on his pass sets. He recognizes stunts and twists well and responds well to bull rushing defensive linemen. His weaknesses, though, he doesn't have a very good placement with his hands when engaged with the defender. Too often he attempts to reset his hands while engaged, which sets up for a losing equation. He doesn't fire out as quickly as you'd want him to, and with shorter arms, that isn't something that's going to change drastically. He struggles to land and consistently finishes blocks while on the move, and due to playing at the FCS level, which is the lower level of Division I in college football, there are legitimate concerns as to whether or not he'll be able to match up with NFL defensive linemen. Phillips also suffered a concussion which cost him most of his 2016 season, so you can bet a lot of teams are going to be concerned when they look into that. Alright, so bottom line, Skylar Phillips is an interesting prospect who has good athleticism, who has decent athleticism and a great work ethic desired from an NFL player, but his smaller frame is going to detract from his strength, and he's going to struggle to finish blocks at this level when he has to block faster linebackers and safeties. Phillips does possess good recognition and awareness in pass protection, and therefore is probably a candidate to change from guard to center in the NFL. Phillips will be able to play in this league, but his physical limitations and concussion history will likely keep teams away from him in the early rounds. He projects as a mid to late round pick. So based off of everyone we've talked about today, Austin, just give me a quick, brief ranking of the prospects and how you think they'd fit best in Pittsburgh and just a little rationale for why.
My favorite is Colby Gossett from Appalachian State. I think that because he's a developing guy, I would like that because I would want the Steelers to take a late round pick. So I feel like he would make the most sense if they were to address this position. Then, honestly, I just think that I want him to work with Mike Munchak. So I feel like having him develop with him would be good. Then next up is Frank Ragnow from Arkansas. He's pretty high. He's projected to go pretty high. So I wouldn't be as excited to draft him. I'd actually kind of be a little bit sad because it meant that the Steelers went pretty high on him. But he could be the next B.J. Finney and just hang out there and be a formidable backup. And he would definitely fit that well. And he could play both center and guard because of his size and stuff. Lastly is Sean Welsh. Sean Welsh's size makes him basically only a center in the NFL. And the Steelers don't need a center at all, really. The center position is covered at the moment. So I wouldn't want Sean Welsh specifically for that. He's not flexible, and he's still projected to go mid round because he's a pretty decent center. I just don't want that for the Steelers. How do you rank your prospects?
My top one is Skylar Phillips for the idea that yes, he's not a great player right now, but I think development under Munchak would be wonderful. And I think his small, compact frame, despite him not being a bigger guy, the Steelers don't really like to employ a lot of big offensive linemen, so I think it makes sense. My second is actually Will Clapp, and I do like the idea of Sam Jones. I'll get to him in a minute, but Clapp's flexibility at the guard and center positions is exactly what I want in a depth player. So I think that makes the most sense. And then last but not least, Sam Jones. Although he's an athletic player, I think the Steelers have a lot of those players right now. And I think the question marks of him being able to add the weight successfully is what kind of keeps me wary of him. So he is last on my list of prospects that I took a look at. All right, is there anything else you wanted to add, Austin? Any more NFL news that we missed that we might have not seen over the past 20 minutes?
Just Browns running back Isaiah Crowell is going to the Jets, but that's really it. He's trash.
All righty. Thank you so much for joining us today on this extended edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Not sure if we're going to get another chance to do one while Austin is here in Brockport, but also I wanted to thank you for joining me today. And it's always fun to do this in person, and thank you for joining me today. And thank you, everybody, for listening in today. And as always, if you have any questions about the show, we mentioned it before, email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter. And our website is strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening, and you all have a good night.
Have a good night, have a good morning, whatever you celebrate.
See ya.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.